Kia ora. My name is Fiona Cassidy and I'm the Chair of the Public Relations Insitute of New Zealand, and I also sit in the Global Alliance. In today's education sector, what we're going to do is have a look at how New Zealand has continued to manage COVID-19 since the pandemic came to New Zealand just over a year ago. One of the advantages of actually being here at the end of the world is that when COVID-19 occurred, we here in New Zealand were able to learn from those who came before us. Our government acted very, very quickly, and effectively it closed our borders. And then what it did is it brought up a tiered system, 1, 2, 3 and 4, and that is the tiered system we've now been living with for the last 12 months. Now, if we are in tier 1 or 2, that means that we actually have to be very, very careful about the way we act. And in fact, that is when we can have different parts of the country at different times in semi-lockdowns. So, unlike the rest of the world, our journey hasn't been necessarily as difficult as it has been for some of you that are listening today. And if you look back to why, there are probably a few reasons. The first thing is we have an extremely strong and extremely amazing Prime Minister. And her government, and also the opposition, decided that the best thing they could do for New Zealand was to stomp it out, to lock it out. And as a result of that, we closed our borders. And in fact, up until last week, our borders did remain closed until we signed an arrangement with Australia, but I'll get to that in a moment. After New Zealand closed down, there was a very, very big public relations campaign that was run throughout the country at all levels. At the national level, that's where all the key messages were coming out, but at the community level, that's where it was being enacted. All New Zealanders, we carry a phone. And one of the things that's keeping us safe today is the COVID-19 tracer. So wherever we are in New Zealand, one of the things we've learnt from a social behaviour point of view is anytime we go into a shop, we actually push the tracer. And that tracer on Bluetooth will say where we are, who we're with. So should there be an event, they can actually minimise and get hold of the people who may have been at that shop or who may have been in that market, who may have been driving down that road and say, hey, get tested. The next thing that New Zealand has done for the last year is they have continued to keep up the awareness of having to keep everybody safe. Our campaign as a campaign was built on 5 million people because that's our population. And so what it was and why it is successful, it's not about me, Fiona, and me and my family. It's about me and Fiona, the street I live in, the family I have, the city I'm in, and the country I'm in. So we have actually predicated a lot of our comms on the we are all in this together, and that has been very successful. Now, the way that MIQ continues to get into New Zealand does tend to be when many New Zealanders are coming home. But what we have at the borders is we actually have a quarantine situation. So anybody who gets off a plane automatically goes into quarantine for 14 days. And while they are in quarantine, what they need to do is they need to actually be tested. So they get the old test for COVID-19, which isn't very nice, which is the swab up the nose, and how does that look? Now, should they actually get COVID-19, and some of them have come from countries that do, they need to stay in isolation until such stage as they are actually clear of COVID-19. Now, we have had a couple of little flares up where our major city, Auckland, because that's usually where people transit through, have actually had to go down into a semi-lockdown. So as we go down levels, what we do is we reduce our freedoms. So for an example, at the moment in New Zealand, everybody has that really, really great opportunity to almost live life the way it used to be. But if we go down to a particular level, what we might find is that we can't gather for more than 50 people, that our funerals and our tangis, we can only have a small set of people at it. So this goes up and down. Now, as a country, we are now almost 6 months where we have been at the level which allows us to continue to have a great life. But how do we maintain this? What is the public relations and the key messages that are actually related to people going, I have to do that? Well, there's lots of reminders because, people, we're people. And after a while we go, I don't need to swipe. I don't need to worry. But every time you see thinking about doing something like that, you will probably have a little alert come up on your phone. And every day New Zealanders know how many people in managed isolation quarantine facilities actually have COVID-19. I think today we had 3 that came through. The other thing we do is we ensure that we do the reminding messages around COVID-19, reminding people to swipe. But the biggest thing that probably reminds most New Zealanders, and we're not always good, is that every shop you walk into, wherever you are or any public place, actually has a sign that you need to scan with your phone. Now, in terms of actually travelling throughout the country, if I'm in my car and I'm driving down the road, I don't need to wear a mask. But if I'm on public transport like a bus or a train or a plane, then what we do recommend to people is please make sure you wear your mask. The other message, which is really, really important to New Zealanders, is if you have a cough or if you have a cold or if you have a sore throat, don't go to work, but make sure you get tested. Has it been an easy ride compared to the rest of the world? It's been a different ride. COVID-19 is going to be with us for some time. We as a nation, because we are at the end of the world, have had the opportunity to have water as our natural barrier. We've had the opportunity to have good governance. But I think most importantly, the reason that we have been able to contain COVID-19 the way we have is because of the team of 5 million. I hope that you found my talk helpful. I hope that maybe wherever you are in the comms world throughout the world, that you can take 1 or 2 little key messages away that will help you as communications people to do your job. Thanks so much. Ka kite.